Started. So hi everyone, welcome to this week's webinar. This is an overview of Tobii Dynavox Snap. My name's Lauren Apokorastos. I'm the New South Wales rep with Link Assistive. I'm a speech pathologist with several years of experience supporting clients with AAC and assistive technology solutions. So this webinar will provide just a brief overview of Tobii Dynavox Snap, including some general information on how to use the program, understanding the key features and settings, understanding the different page sets that are available, and some other cool things like how to print off page sets. There'll be time for some questions at the end, so feel free to type any questions you might have into the Q&A for discussion. Okay, so the first thing I want to go through today is just a general overview of Tobii Dynavox Snap as a program and the different names that are used to describe different page sets within the program itself. So along the top, there's a bar labeled hardware, and this outlines the different hardware that can be used to access Snap. So it includes the iPad, Windows 10, and current Tobii Dynavox devices such as the Indie, the i110, i13, and i16. And below this, we have Tobii Dynavox Snap, which is the name of the whole program. And below that are all of the different page sets that are available within the Tobii Dynavox Snap program. So I'll go through all of them just briefly in this webinar, but just quickly to outline what they are. So we've got Core First Scanning, Aphasia, Gateway, which is a paid add-on, Pod, also a paid add-on, and the text page set. And you can see there are some visuals for what they look like, but we'll go through those today as well. So where is Tobii Dynavox Snap available? It's available on Windows, where it can be used either on dedicated Tobii Dynavox devices or on a laptop, computer, or tablet that has Windows. And it's also available on iOS or Apple, where it can be used on devices such as an iPad. So a little more about the different page sets, starting with Core First. Core First is a core vocabulary page set, and it was developed with the concept of core vocabulary in mind. The grid sizes that are available within this page set range from 1x1 to 8x10. And there are two different ways to grow and support language within this software. The first way is size-based growth. So this essentially allows the learner to grow from a small number of buttons to smaller buttons. So in this approach, vocabulary is typically added to the outer edges of the grid to maintain the relative position of the vocabulary to each other. So if you have a look at want, like, not, and more in the images of the PowerPoint, and then also look at the addition of the pronouns to the edge and an additional row of vocab at the bottom between images 1 and 2. Occasionally, a column is added in the middle in order to maintain the Fitzgerald key or the subject-verb-object phrasing. So you can see the difference between the middle and the last image, where a column of verbs was added to the last, but it's maintained that subject-verb-object order. So that's one way to grow the vocab. Another way to grow it is through location. So this would be where you start with a larger grid size and you show the vocabulary in that over time. So we start with a grid size that we feel the user may grow into. So for example, here you can see this is a 5x5 grid, but we want to introduce vocabulary in smaller steps. And that could be either to not overwhelm the user or to really just take the time to help them learn the true meaning of the words. So we can start big and fill in. So they can see where they're going, and the words will never move from the position in which they were first introduced. So whether you grow in grid size or by location, you're never in a position that you can't move forward in some way. If you'd like to know more about the Core First page set and the research behind how it was developed, as well as some key features and settings and resources, you can check out the live webinar section of our website, we'll have a webinar about that coming up fairly soon. Now I'll talk through a little bit about the core first scanning page set. So with this page set, when scanning is activated, the device will highlight items on the screen either visually or auditorily, or both if you choose. And when the highlight reaches the desired item, the individual will make a selection using a switch. So selections can be made using one switch, where the scanning between the items is automatic, or two switches, where scanning is stepped through manually by the user. The scanning pattern can be linear, can be by row or by column, or by group. So these scan types and patterns can be adjusted in the settings. And I'll just talk through the Learn to Scan tool. So there are lots of resources available that can help with switch scanning. The Learn to Scan tool can be found in the dashboard on the core first scanning page set, and it contains some activity-based pages that help with scanning. They can introduce scanning to an individual, but should probably not be their only communication page set. It's more just a learning tool. So Tobii Dynavox has a core first scanning implementation guide as well, which can help with this. And I've got my colleague Jess just popping some of these links into the chat box if you'd like to access those. This document will take you through scan types and patterns, switch positioning, switches and accessories, teaching scanning, editing and modifying scan settings, and it provides some extra resources and troubleshooting advice as well. So a very handy resource to have. If you're interested in knowing more about the core first scanning page set, you can check out our live webinars section on our website, because yes, there'll be one about that as well. Okay, so I'll just very briefly touch on the pod page sets, which are, as I mentioned earlier, an add-on to Tobii Dynavox Snap. So the pod page sets come in 15 preschool and school, 15 plus preschool and school, 60 expanded keyword, and 60 complex. We have, of course, another webinar coming up about this, and what that will do is we'll take you through Snap, but with a focus on pod, and that will include some information such as the background of the pod page set, some key features, differences between the high-tech pod page sets, some key settings and editing features, and support and implementation resources for that as well. Okay, so there's also the Gateway page set. So Gateway is an AAC language strategy created by Joan Bruno, and that's focused on core words. And it offers pages designed for different stages of language development, including those listed here on the slide. So I'll go next to text page set. There's a text page set within Tobii Dynavox Snap as well, which supports literate users to quickly access commonly used phrases, which can be found under quick fires. But you can also access more phrases for different topics or categories under the phrases tab. There is also a QWERTY keyboard for typing out words, and plenty of scope for adding in your own frequently used phrases as well. If you'd like to know more about the text page set, there is a webinar coming up about that as well, which you can check out. Okay, then there is the Aphasia page set. So this was designed specifically to support people with aphasia. The symbols are default PCS slimline. It includes quickfire messages with social and conversational messages, including conversational repairs. There is a whiteboard feature, which links closely with the evidence around communication support strategies and providing context. You can add photographs to the whiteboard to act as a visual scene and a contextual cue. There are also topics which are fully customizable, so they're relevant to the individual. The layout for these can be either a grid or a visual scene. There's also a keyboard feature, which can be QWERTY or ABC, you can choose. And the dashboard includes some time information as well. So it's got a calendar with daily activities and a weekly schedule, and a photo album feature as well. And of course, we have another webinar coming up about this, so jump onto our website to register for that. Okay, so Tobii Dynavox Snap page sets are available in multiple languages, including all of those listed on this slide. But new languages become available all the time. So as long as your software is up to date, you'll have access to all the latest languages as they are released. Okay, so I'll get into talking about some settings, starting off with how to set up a user. So it's pretty simple. You just choose if you want to set up a brand new user, or if you want to restore a saved page set or user that has already been created. So you might have already had a user set up on a different device, so you can restore that, or as I said, create your own. So as you move through the wizard, it will give you the option to select a page set for your user. It'll also show you how to select the grid size that you want to start with, but all of these settings can be changed once your user is created, but it sort of takes you through how to set that up from the start, which is really handy. And I'm going to go through how to do that later on within the program as well. So just a quick thing of what the settings look like. So this is the settings menu. And you can see that there are 5 tabs running along the bottom. So that's these 5 here. And there's some shortcuts that run along the sidebar that sort of change depending on what tab you're in. So I'll go through each of these. So with the button tab, that allows you to edit single buttons with images, text, and actions. The page tab will allow you to edit the style and the settings for single pages. You can also import and export pages, and you can print pages from this as well, which is a new feature that I'll show you in a moment. There's also the page set button that allows you to edit the style of the entire page set. It also allows you to change page sets and to change grid size as well. Then there's the user button. So that within that button, you can back up your user. You can change the voice that you have for your user, also pronunciation of some words if you wanted to change those. You can also change the access method in there, and also data tracking. And then there's the system button, which essentially allows you to you can go into full screen mode within that. You can play around with password settings, and you can also access new symbols from that button as well. I'll go through some of these within Tobii Dynavox Snap at the end of the webinar. Okay, so there's some other features that you can do. So you can also add symbol sets. You can see in the first image, you can do that through the system tab as well. I'll show you how to do that, but things like PCS high contrast symbols are really handy to have. So you can add those in and access those. And then you can also print, as I mentioned before. So that's from the page button, and you can see there's a print option there, but also the little printer icon on the side will allow you to do that as well. And one more thing to go through before I jump onto the program is backing up your user. So you can save and share a whole user area or just single pages. You can save to your My Tobii Dynavox account, which is a free account for speech pathologists, or you can save to a USB and transfer things across that way. It's highly recommended to back up regularly, especially if you're making a lot of changes or edits to your page sets. But there's also another really cool feature called syncing. So syncing is what allows you to use the same version of the page set on multiple devices that have the same My Tobii Dynavox account. So for example, if you're using Tobii Dynavox Snap on an iPad and you want to start using a dedicated device or a different kind of tablet, different hardware, you can do a sync across from what you had on your iPad if you're using the same My Tobii Dynavox account. So that's a really cool feature as well. And I can show you how to do that in just a moment. Here we go. All right, let's have a play. I'll jump on to the program and I'll just run through some of those features that I just talked about. You can see Jess answering some questions. Thank you. We'll go through some questions at the end as well. There will be time for that. But I'll just demonstrate some of those things that I just talked about in the slides so you can get a bit of an idea of how that works. So up the very top right-hand corner, you can see a little cog with a pencil through it. That's the settings button. So you click on that and that basically takes you into edit mode. You can see that you're in edit mode because there's a blue bar that runs across the top. And you can also see the sidebar here as well. You can expand these with the arrows out just to show you what each button means. Really handy feature. And then also down the bottom, so you can see there are the tabs, but they're not open. So I'll just click on the arrow and it's opened up the tabs for me. Now I can see them. So if we want to, I might start with user, because that I'll take you through how to create a user and then we'll go from there. So you can see that the user that I'm on at the moment is my one there, but I'm going to click in here and then it's got a button new user. So if I click on new user and I go to, it'll take me to the wizard, which is this page here. So you can do a brand new user or an existing user, as I mentioned before, where you're restoring from one that you've already created. But I'm not going to restore, I'm going to create a new one to take you through that process. So I'll call this user 1, and it's at this point where you can change the language. So I mentioned earlier that there are a bunch of languages. This is the part where you would change that. So if I click here and I scroll, you can see there's a whole range of different languages that it's available in. I'm just going to keep it on English for now. And you can see the little green arrow down the bottom to take me to the next page. So which of the following best describes user 1? So if you've created this with a client in mind, this is really helpful because you can have a look and see, okay, do they need text with symbol supports? Do they just need text only? Do they have aphasia? And you can choose from there. So I'm just going to go needs text with symbol supports for now and go next. At this point, you can select an access method too, which is very handy. I'll keep it on touch for now, but there are a whole bunch of different access methods that you can use within Tobii Dynavox Snap. Okay, I'll go next and select a page set. So you can, at this point, you can choose your page set. But as I mentioned earlier, if you select a page set and you decide later on that you don't want to use that and you want to try something different, you can change it. But I'll just select core first for now and go next. Then it's going to ask what version is the best suited. I'll go with UK just because UK and Australian English are fairly similar, but you can see that there are other options in there as well. I'll go next. Okay, select a voice. So if I want to, I can just go through all of the voices, but there are a lot of them. So it's cool because you can filter it. So if say I want a child female, there's an Australian voice, Olivia. So I'll just select her and go next. Okay, so now I can select a grid size. So selecting a grid size, you can see it's on 8 by 10 at the moment. Olivia's a child and she's sort of new, so we might go a little bit lower down. I'm just basing this off a random case. Go next and let's have a look. Here we go. So that's what it'll come up looking like. And we've created our user. It's automatically taken me out of the settings. You can see that because the bar above the top is black. And if I select something, it'll come up in the message window. All right, I'm going to jump back into the settings to show you some other things that you can do within the user tab, and then I'll run through the other tabs. So you can see there's user 1, that's what we're on. And if I want to change back to my other one, that's still there. This is the part where you will back up, or you can back up your user. So if I go to the little save icon and click on that, it gives me the option to back up the whole user to my Tobii Dynavox account. Really handy to do, because if you're working between accounts, between devices, it's good to have it all saved onto your account. And you can also back up to a local file, which could be like a USB, and you can do it that way as well. Very handy if internet connections are not great. So that's one thing you can do within the user. We'll come back out. You can see that's my Tobii Dynavox account there, but that's how you would log in to make sure that you're in the right account. And then there's some voice settings and other options in here. So I'll just jump over to preferences. So these are a whole bunch of preferences that you might have set for your specific user. So you can go through each of those and have a bit of an explore and a play with some of those. Some of them are automated, and others you can choose yourself. Okay, this is also where you can change the access method. So you saw as I was setting up the user, you can select that, but you can change it at any time by going into the user tab and clicking on access method. And then you can see at the moment it's on touch, but I can go into here and change to any of the other access methods. So for example, if you were using the core first scanning page set, if you click on, you'll need to come in and click on scanning so that it's set up for that page set. And there's also a data tracking feature within this, which is quite cool. So you can select to track button usage. If I turn that on, I'll get a little message that says, you know, do you give consent for this to be recorded? Because what it does is it saves it to your My Tobii Dynavox account on the cloud, so you can access it. So we'll just say yes. And now if we look up the top, there is a little visual that looks like a little graph, and that is the data tracking setting. So you can click on that and you'll see that there are some other settings. You can show button usage counts. So you can choose to turn that on, or show modeling counts. If you turn on modeling mode, that's really handy if you're, as a clinician, if you're modeling, or if parent or a carer is modeling language for the user, but you don't want that to be tracked as their usage, you can turn this on. And if I come out of it, you can see that it's on because this little visual will change. So that's very handy to have, because that allows you to distinguish between when you're modeling and when the person is actually using it. And then when you're done with your modeling, you can turn that off, and they'll have access to that and it will record only their data. You can see here that it says visit the usage reports section of your My Tobii Dynavox account for more data visualization options. So that's where you can see the data and actually visualize what that looks like. And there are some graphs and things. So that's that part. I'm going to turn that off. That's the data tracking. So I'm going to jump over to, that's pretty much everything that you can do within the user. There are some other things as well, but you can explore that. I'm going to jump back to the button tab. So you'll see it'll say select a button to edit it. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to go back to system because I want to show you something funky that you can do in here. So with system, this is where I mentioned on one of the earlier slides about symbol sets. And I mentioned you can add PCS high contrast symbols. So if I come down, I can see that that's already in there, PCS high contrast symbols. It's an installed symbol set. So I've already got it there. But if I scroll all the way down, you'll see that there are downloadable symbols. So these are all the other symbol sets that you can download to be able to access within your user. If I scroll down, there is the, I might have already downloaded it. Oh yeah, I have. So PCS sign language symbols is up here because it's already been downloaded. That's another one that is quite good to have. If I come up, PCS high contrast symbols, if I click on that and hold it and slide it, it'll slide to the top. So if I'm wanting to edit a button and I want to see the PCS high contrast symbols first when I'm changing the symbols, if I slide it up to the top here in System within this Symbol Sets tab, then it will come up. So if I now jump across to the Button tab and I select Want and I want to edit that symbol, if I click on it, it'll come up with this menu here. If I click on the magnifying glass, it'll take me to Symbol Search. And you can see that the PCS high contrast symbol has come up first. It's very handy because then I don't have to scroll all the way through all of the symbols to find the one I want. So that's quite a cool feature as well. So that would be something that you could do if you're editing for high contrast. There's also then, you can add photos, take your own photos or from the photo library. You can also filter the symbols if you want to make it easier to find. So if you just want child, male symbols, you can filter it that way. Then you can see there's also button type. If I click on that and I go to regular, that's where it allows me to change the message. So if I was wanting to edit a button to say a full phrase, but to just have a single word in the label, I could leave that there and I could type in a full phrase. I want the, whatever it is. So that's a cool feature that you can add in as well. And then you can play around with the actions down the bottom. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can edit the vocabulary to suit your user. Very handy. You can also, so that's all within content. If I jump to style, this is where you can change things like the background color, the border, the label, all of those sort of visual features. You can also link buttons to different pages. So I could link it to a new page or to an existing page, a copy of the page or an import. I could import and link to the page. And then there are some other preference things as well within that. Jumping over to page, just conscious of time. So if we have a look at grid size, you can see within here, it's selected to match the grid size for the entire page set that I've chosen for my user. But if I don't want this particular page to be a 3x4, I can turn this off and then I can choose what grid size I want for this particular page. So that's quite a cool feature because you don't have to comply with the same size that you've chosen for your page set. You can go into style. So at the moment it's saying match, but again, I can turn that off and change that. Preferences, same thing. Okay, this is where you can import and export pages. So this is very handy if you create a page and you want to be able to import that page. So for example, if you created it in a different device and I want to import that page onto here, I can do that through this button. Same with exporting. So if I create it on here and I want to export it to a different device, I can do that through this. I click on it, gives me the option, my Tobii Dynavox account, a local file, so a USB, or sharing. Sharing is essentially sending that page to another My Tobii Dynavox account. So if your colleague has one or someone that you're working with has one, you can share that as well. You can also print pages from this tab as well. This is the print button here, but it's also up the top there, as I showed you in the slide earlier. All right, jumping into page set tab. So the page set tab, you can, at the moment it's in core first because that's the one that I chose when I set up user one. But again, I can click into there and I can change that if I want to. I go to create page set and you'll see that the ones that are available are some of those here. There's the Aphasia page set, the pod page sets I mentioned earlier, the text page set, So there's lots of options, core first scanning, and different languages as well. So you'll need to choose between those. At this point as well, I can choose to save a copy of this page set to my Tobii Dynavox or to a local file. So that's quite a cool feature as well. So also within page set tab, I can adjust the grid size. So if I adjust the grid size here, it's going to change the grid size for the whole page set, not just for that individual page that I'm on. So I've selected a 4x4. So then if I click on done and I come out of it, it's changed to a 4x4. I think that's pretty much everything that I have to show today. As I said, there are some other webinars coming up over the next few weeks that will go more in depth about the different page sets and how they each work. But yeah, just wanted to give a general overview today of what is within Tobii Dynavox Snap and some of the settings that you can access and how to do that. So I'm going to jump back into the slides and we'll just go to the next one here. So this one, there are some companion apps such as Pathways for Core First. It's free. It's a great resource for helping you with thinking about goals, activities, all sorts of different ideas for helping you to prepare a user to use Tobii Dynavox Snap. So that's really handy. These links I might ask, might see if Jess can just copy and paste some of those links, all of these links into their chat box so that you can access them. The introduction to SnapPod is a very handy YouTube video that you can check out. There are also core word lessons, so core first learning. There's Boardmaker Student Center app, which is very handy as well. My Tobii Dynavox, which I talked about quite a bit, but that will essentially show you how to set that up. And within that, there's some really handy tools for thinking about AAC assessment and putting some of those ideas together. Training webinars and supports, again, through the My Tobii Dynavox website. Some low-tech backups. So these are some printable and editable core first communication boards. So these are ones that are sort of pre-made, but as I mentioned, now with the new feature, you can print page sets yourself to use as low-tech resources if you want to. But sometimes the printing can be a little bit tricky or a bit funny, so you can access the low-tech backups within that link as well. Another very handy resource is the Tobii Dynavox community page on Facebook. People are always asking questions in there about the different programs and how they work and if they're stuck on anything, so it's a really good place to go to get some help with anything if you're needing that or if you have a question to ask. And that is all the content that I have for today. So you can contact us on the number just there or through office@linkassistive.com. There's also our website there, which I mentioned for the additional live webinars that are coming up. If you click into the website and go to support and resources and live webinars, that's where that is. And you can also stay up to date with what we're up to on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and you can sign up to our newsletter as well if you wanted to get some more information that way.